Cool. I don't know if you already got an introduction, but I'm Ori from Diorg, and I'll be talking today about DAOs in the wild, what's going on in the crypto world of DAOs today. I hail from a DAO called Diorg, which is a development collective that works on various Web3 projects in the space. So I'll start off talking about DAOs in general, and then some of the ones um, that are operating today, and then dive deeper into a case study of Diorg um, as a DAO that there's some like interesting things to learn from. And then we can go back and do a Q&A and talk about the other DAOs I mentioned and principles and economics and any other aspect. Cool. So what's the point of DAOs? Like, why do we need a new form of coordination based on blockchain? And maybe you're not even familiar with the concept of DAOs, and this is the first you're hearing about it. So DAOs stand for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, and it's effectively a set of smart contracts to manage shared resources across a distributed group of people. And you can think of this as like a company where you replace the legal architecture of the company with software. And so all of the agreements, all of the decisions are executed through software, and that software lives on a resilient, tamper-proof network like a blockchain. And so to get more specific here, what are the differences between, let's say, a corporation or a government, let's say, versus a DAO? And so the first one would be that the DAO relegates all like administrative tasks to be encoded in software. And so, like, let's say the threshold for spending money is that 56% of the shareholders need to approve a transaction. And so that can be written into the code of the DAO so that it's literally impossible to pull funds out unless you have that like 56% majority. And this can get as complex as your imagination is capable of, because it's just code, and so you can come up with any crazy or simple rules for different kinds of actions that the organization can take. Um, and secondly, like DAOs are typically decentralized by definition. Instead of needing a hierarchy of decision makers to be authorizing different types of actions, as is the case in like a government bureaucracy or in like a corporate bureaucracy, you kind of can rely more fluidly on the inputs of all of the actors involved, and this can be democratic, like one person, one vote, or it can be like reputation weighted or share weighted. You can come up with different ways of doing this, but it basically allows you to like leverage the wisdom of the crowd or of the constituents of the group. And also, because DAOs live on blockchains, they're also transparent by default, which is like the opposite of, let's say, a corporation, which is secret and hidden by default, and only shows its public records if prompted to do so by an external authority or public pressure. Um, as opposed to that, DAOs, by nature, everything is on chain. So you can see all transactions going in and out of a DAO, who voted on what, who greenlighted or tried to block different decisions. It's all kind of executed on the blockchain, and so it's visible to everyone. And lastly, because it's on a blockchain and it's not bound by let's say a state or a country's like company formation laws, it's borderless and global by default. So anyone can participate. Anyone can be a shareholder. Anyone can be a worker. Anyone can be a contributor, an investor. They don't discriminate. Yeah, and so like when thinking about DAOs, it might sound like vague and abstract, and so it's easier to like nail down a couple considerations. Like, what is this DAO even doing? I mean, DAO is an incredibly generic concept. It's really just a way of governing something in a decentralized fashion, in a software-based fashion. So when I go through some of these like different categories of DAOs, you should think about like what is being governed here. Like the second option, the second item here, like, are we governing shared pool of funds? We're also probably needing to govern the decision-making shares themselves. So how people can accumulate power, how power gets redistributed. Or maybe we're governing like a particular system, like a financial protocol, and we're making decisions about the values and the parameters inside of that financial protocol. We can also upgrade the code of the DAO itself. The DAO can upgrade its own rules, just like a company can pass a proposition to amend its own bylaws. So it's self-amending in that way. And then also DAOs can govern. They can be governance components in other systems. For example, if you could imagine there could be like a Facebook DAO that instead of Facebook's army of contract moderation contractors, there could be a DAO that moderates content. So if you flag something, something goes to the queue of the DAO, and a certain threshold of people need to agree that it's not allowed. The content is not allowed, and so yeah, DAOs can be used to govern like software systems, the arbitration, dispute resolution. They can also play a financial role in financial protocols, like be like a lender of last resort in some sort of like banking scheme. And yeah, so back to this top one, like who is doing the governing? So like who has the shares? How did they get the shares? You'll learn that in the blockchain space, in the past year, like airdrops have become popular, where the shares of a new DAO will be like just dropped out of the sky to people that the DAO thinks will be good stewards of whatever it is the DAO is trying to accomplish. Other times you can buy in. So maybe there's some sort of continuing sale, and an algorithmic price for the shares of the DAO, and anyone can buy in and now be a shareholder. And then also it could be shares can be distributed, other than at the moment of inception. Over time, there can be a logic encoded for who gets what shares over time. And then also like why are people governing? So is there incentives? Are they getting like micro payments every time they vote or decide on something? Maybe they rely on the DAO for their income. Maybe they're just really passionate about what the DAO is doing. It's the same reason, do people get involved in the governance of all types of organizations. You'll see the same amount of variance in DAOs. And then there's these other considerations, like, is there a business model? What are the workflows? How do things get done in this like virtual community? And then who is this open to? Is it completely public and anyone who wants can like join a chat group and join the DAO through a proposal or buying in? Does the DAO have a presence on social media? Just like a company or any other community. And then is there a legal structure associated with the DAO? So this almost sounds antithetical because kind of the reason for the DAO, for the concept of the DAO is the keyword is autonomous. It doesn't rely on an external government to grant it corporate charter. It's just code, and it's just deployed to the blockchain with a simple transaction. So you don't have to ask anyone's permission. But at the same time, DAOs might want to interface with the existing legacy structures. So maybe the DAO's members want to be able to like report their income to their tax authorities. Maybe the DAO wants to enter into legally binding agreements with corporate counterparties. So you'll see that there's often a legal entity or several embedded like around the existing DAOs in the wild today. So this following categorization is just something I thought about after reflecting on like the DAOs, mainly the ones that have come online this year or in 2020, because it was a really busy year for DAOs. And so this isn't by any means like a definitive taxonomy, but just kind of like an easier way of grasping and categorizing the DAOs that are out there today. And so really all started with like grant DAOs. I'm not going to go through like the history of DAOs. You can read about that online, but I'll talk about really the latest and greatest in DAOs, let's say. So in 2019, a DAO was formed called Moloch DAO, and it was focused on giving grants in the Ethereum ecosystem. So funding public goods, funding goods that would benefit like the entire ecosystem of like developers on Ethereum. And so it was formed by a group of like crypto influencers who pooled their money to form this DAO, where there would need to be like at least more yeses than nos on every vote to distribute funds to development teams. And that was Moloch DAO. And then there was some other DAOs worth mentioning, kind of like in the grants category. Yang DAO was formed during the election to back Andrew Yang and make memes about him. Kura DAO is a cool DAO in Curacao that works on the community projects there, like trash pickups and like it coordinates other like projects there. And so anyone can donate to these DAOs. and then they like distribute the funds. And over time, different people can gain like a voting power in them. And next we have investments. These are DAOs that have profit-seeking purpose and come in all varieties, shapes, sizes. This category has exploded a lot in 2020. So we can start with the top two, like PieDAO and Yearn Finance, are more so like financial instrument managers. And so they govern things like ETFs and vaults that are running different like investment strategies. And people can just basically put their funds in to one of the products that these DAOs offer. And then there's a giant pool of funds, and there's governance over the parameters for how those funds are allocated across different products and traded. And yeah, and then people can cash out with their earnings from those. And then the bottom two are more so like VCs. You can think of them like more like private equity or venture capital, where startups come to these DAOs, they make proposals of, hey, we have this new project, can we get an investment? And then these DAOs collect equity, or usually tokenized equity, in those projects, and then have a similar like portfolio kind of like risk tolerance to like tech VCs. And I should mention, these are all public DAOs with websites. You can go and see for yourself like how they work, and even get involved or join. This in 2020, or in 2019, we also saw the rise of like service DAOs. So DAOs that are formed for the purpose of provisioning some sort of service, like usually in this case, like technical or legal services, like professional services. So Dorg, that I'm a member of, is a dev shop. It's a dev collective. We work with companies who need development to be done, and we coordinate teams to go off and like execute on those roadmaps for those like tech teams. LexDAO does something similar, I believe, for legal, usually crypto law, and Raid Guild also does Web3 design and development. And so these are DAOs that the main thing they're governing is treasuries of funds. And so like clients will pay them, and then they'll pay out their workers. And people can gain more voting power in these DAOs and influence in these DAOs through working and being around for longer. Yeah, and then next, this is more like your traditional business, you could say. It's like the analog of like a business that maybe raises funds to develop a product that will eventually generate revenue. And so these projects are working on different kinds of like new products, and they're all focused around like developing that product from scratch. So these are like DAO native. There was no company before them. They just started as a DAO to coordinate around like building a particular product. So in the case of DXDAO, it's got a suite of products related to decentralized finance. Web3 API is a developer tool. And OneHive is making different tools for like actually like governance tools. And then this is by far, I would say, the largest category. It's DAOs that govern a platform. And so when I give like the Facebook DAO example earlier, you can think of these like that. There's some platform, maybe it was developed by like a centralized company, but then eventually the company wanted to cede control of what they built to the community of users of that product or of that platform. So Uniswap, for example, is a small team of developers, and the product has been live for several years. And then in 2020, they released a token, the Uni token, which is the governance token of the Uniswap protocol and the DAO. And so now the community of users of Uniswap all received an airdrop of this token, and now they're all the governors of the protocol. And so there's a transition happening now where the team is becoming less influential and less involved in the platform, and the users are taking over. Similar with Compound and Maker, started by traditional companies, small tech companies, and then as their platform gained traction and got a lot of users, they passed off kind of the governance reins to the users. And this is all a process. I mean, decentralization is definitely like a process, not an end state. And so they're all at different like levels of decentralization. And the idea is that like as they become public goods that millions of people rely on every day, they'll be controlled by those people. Unlike financial service providers and platforms today, where it remains under the control of their founders like perpetually. Similarly, Nexus Mutual is a cool project that's like an insurance system, and so they can underwrite risk, and anyone can join the DAO by like buying into their shares. And they actually have a UK company that's linked to the DAO in an interesting way. But the DAO itself performs like a pretty sophisticated operation around assessing risk, and then when there's a claim made, the DAO chooses whether or not to pay out the claim. So their first product is covering smart contract risk. So smart contracts can have bugs. And so, for example, if you put some money into like this one of these lending protocols that we're talking about, and the contract got like had a bug in it and blew up, and all the money was lost, and you had bought insurance beforehand on Nexus Mutual, you can then make a claim to the Nexus Mutual DAO and say, hey, look, I had this coverage that I bought, and my investment blew up, and I'd like to get my payout. Decentralized is a DAO that's governing like this virtual world, this like VR metaverse, and there's many other examples. This is really the tip of the iceberg. So now I'm going to run quickly through the DAO that I'm the most involved with, Deorg, as a case study of what a DAO can look like in practice. Like I said earlier, Deorg is a service provider DAO. It's not an investment DAO. It doesn't pool funds. It doesn't govern a platform. It doesn't develop a particular product. It's a collective of engineers and designers that gets hired and contracted by usually crypto projects to help them build. And so we've come up with like a lot of structures to make it really attractive for people to like come and stay on the DAO and contribute, and then sometimes graduate onto like other projects. But we would like to have like a churn of kind of people coming through, learning about DAOs, developing, getting better, and then like growing with the DAO. So yeah, we've been around for 2 years. We have like about 30 active builders, a little over 30 active builders, and have shipped lots of projects in like the Web3 ecosystem. If you are involved in Web3, you probably like heard of a lot of the projects we've worked on. And yeah, we're continuing to grow and kind of like evolve new structures, which I'll go over like the basics of like how our structures work right now. So yeah, we have a DAO, and that is basically a set of smart contracts that governs funds. And we all have like shares in that DAO. And the more we set it up so that the more money you earn, the more shares you have. So your voting power is basically your aggregate earnings over time. And that way, like the more someone works, the more they earn, and the more like voting power they have. And so the distribution over time just reflects like the aggregate value add of all the people involved. And so we have like an easy activation process where anyone can join by basically submitting a proposal saying, hey, look, I built this thing that's relevant to your collective in some way, and here's my background. And we decide whether or not we want that person to join by voting yes or no in the proposal. And then there's a reputation weighted vote, and if it hits a certain threshold, then the proposal passes. And we pay like our new members like $100 as like for completing that challenge, and then they get their first 100 shares as well. And so we've had really cool like all sorts of projects that people do like across disciplines, mostly design and development focused. Yeah, so we also utilize the DAO obviously for growing and bringing in new clients. So we have like a commission structure where people, since we don't have like an owner or manager, we need like incentives for anybody to do the different like operational tasks of the DAO. So another one of those is sales, obviously, and so we have commission structure set up so that anyone in the DAO who brings in a project, makes contact with a potential client, closes a deal, gets a team together to start executing, will get a commission, and they can come and propose to get that from the DAO. And then the DAO actually approves the engagements in the first place. And this is how we like have leveraged our DAO to be able to sign like agreements through these proposals. Like I said, we have all sorts of like payments. So like the commissions I talked about, we also have like referrals for onboarding other builders. So like recruitment incentives. People can, if they take on expenses on behalf of the DAO, they can make a proposal to get reimbursed. For example, here Jordan bought our ENS domain, so we could own dorg.eth. And so he had to pay, personally like 0.77 ETH for that. and then he asked the DAO for a reimbursement. And then we, subscribe to all sorts of SaaS services, and so someone will like pay with their credit card and ask the DAO for a reimbursement. Similarly, the main thing that's going on is people are getting paid for their work on client projects. So there'll be like a milestone hit, and then the worker comes to the DAO and they say, hey, I'd like to get paid for week 5 and 6, milestone 3 of this project. And so they'll get the payment and then the requisite amount of reputation. And like I said earlier, DAOs can be self-amending, and so we can actually pass proposals to upgrade the code of our own DAO. And then we can do other like corporate governance kind of decision making through the DAO. Like we can execute items to like amend our legal bylaws and like to contract lawyers and stuff like that. We've seed funded projects through the DAO, so the DAO is constantly building up a reserve from the margin it makes on its client work, and then we use those funds to not only like pay for operational expenses, but also to like spin out new projects that we're all interested in. We could do things like treasury management, like selling off some of our ether to switch it into DAI or USDC or something stable. Yeah, that's mainly it. I just wanted to share like that you can explore any of the DAOs I talked about. You can go directly to their their websites and check them out. There's lots more that I didn't talk about. There's new DAOs like launching every week at this point. It's a really exciting space because there's a lot of experiments going on in governance and in how you coordinate with people across the world that largely you don't know. You can create your own DAO. There's like easy to use, easy with an asterisk, DAO creators, where you can kind of go through a clicking, graphical user interface to launch your own DAO. The DAO space is still really early, so the tooling is not that robust. There's kind of not a ton of customization you can do quite yet without being a smart contract engineer, but the space is moving really quickly. So new kind of like custom DAOs are being developed by teams all the time, and then those can get forked since all the code is open source. So you're really seeing like a rapid rate of like evolution happening in front of our eyes. And yeah, if you want, you can learn more about our DAO, Dorg, and join. There's a QR code there to like an angel list posting we have up for like open positions. But then what ends up happening is you learn about it there. Feels like a traditional company, but then you actually click and it's a DAO, and so you have to make like a proposal to the DAO to join. So we're trying to like combine the world of like traditional companies and startups with the back end of having like a DAO manage everything. So it's a collective of your peers, and I'll be able to take questions here, but also you have Hector and Nestor there with you in person that can answer and discuss all of this just as good as I. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ori. And the members of the org, the DAO in Miami are Hector and Nestor, and they're here to answer your questions as well. If you wanna, if you have one right now, if you wanna go for it. Anybody has a question for the group? Yes.
Oh yeah, I saw a slide about ETF. ETS, ETF. ETS. There was a slide about financial community governed ETFs. AI.
Oh, sure. The ETFs?
Yeah. So, how do you? I mean, first of all, how do you create one? What is the ETFs right now? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so it's not exactly like ETFs of like the traditional world. It's crypto ETFs. So they're governing pools that self-balance between different tokens. So you'll have, let's say, 7 ERC20 tokens for 7 different like protocols or projects, and it'll have some logic for how often it rebalances and or like the threshold at which it can rebalance based on like how spread apart the prices get. And so the DAO can govern like what's in those different baskets of tokens and what are the different ratios and what's the frequency on which they update and what's the management fee that maybe like the DAO gets, and yeah, stuff like that. I couldn't hear everything you said, so I don't know if I answered your question.
What if you want to create your own ETF? Like, is that possible? Create your own ETF, like, or like, if you want to create an ETF that just funds
Yes.
startups in space.
Yes, you can create any type of ETF and repurpose it to whatever. Repurpose it to. You can create any ETF and repurpose it according to whatever the objective is. Be it funding other startups, funding community, city project, or go nuts. We go nuts.
What about the governance part of it after you put it? Like, who vets saying that, like, oh, these are actually, let's commit to these ETF? Like, who takes care of the governance process? Like, do you guys have a governance process? If I come to you and say, I want to create this ETF, like, how do you do it?
Okay, but in that case, if you want to create an ETF, it will be like hiring us to help you lay out the roadmap and execute upon whatever roadmap we assign. We end up.
You need to
As
do
far-
your own legal due diligence. Right, that's what I'm saying. And once I create the ETF, like, where does one find it? Like,
So it ends up being an address,
okay.
and in that address, you're gonna have like several interfaces that are gonna be able to interact with the ETF. Right? Whatever actions and things that you do in the ETF,
Right.
will be executed upon your signature with your wallet,
Okay.
and most likely will be through a wallet. So that's how you manipulate and operate your ETF DAO, assuming that you want to add governance to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, you.
Will you change your business model as regulation comes in, or do you see your business as agnostic to regulation?
Yo, want to take this one?
Yeah. Was that for me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so for ourselves, for Door, yeah, we've had a lot of legal analysis, like upfront with our formation, and then also over time, we've worked with many different lawyers, and we're really confident that ours doesn't have to kind of like worry about regulation because we're really just service providers. If you look at the underlying, like what's going on, it's clients pay for work, we work, and then we pay out ourselves as contractors. And so it's a really simple legal design. There's no speculative asset involved. Yeah, one interesting fun fact is, I mean, I don't know if this is true, but I think we're like one of the first or the only like business making the amounts of money we are without a bank account. Like we don't have a single bank account. Everything gets paid into the DAO, and the DAO pays everyone. And so yeah, we don't have to deal with like any any intermediaries in the management of our finances. And yeah, we just see that as a huge advantage. And also there's a lot less like managerial overhead when you don't have to like police each other because there's like a bank account that's like vulnerable to any of the managers, let's say, stealing from it. Like our DAO is unhackable. You can't steal from our DAO. Like everything's permissioned through smart contracts. So yeah, we see it as like, if anything, more companies should go in this direction. And I would think regulation would be like positive to that. I think the ones that will have problems with regulation are definitely like the ones governing these like financial protocols and platforms, and then the ones like managing investments. Like that's where you're going to see regulation have an impact. But on the service ones, it's really simple. Yeah.
Joy, last question.
Yeah, I saw something about the Angry Yang and he's running for mayor, so not to say the president of Europe. Can you speak a little bit on that and how we can synergize activation with Angry Yang's platform?
So I can tell you a little bit about his campaign. This was for president, for general election. But that's a great idea. Anybody should reach out to Yang and propose again, become a DAO for his mayor. But the way it works is quite simple. People can fund the DAO by just sending these to the address. And the only way that the funds can be manipulated and executed is upon consensus of the whole DAO, right? So members would have to vote. Somebody would say, no, let's invest this amount in advertising for TV. Then there would be a proposal for X amount of funds to be invested in such advertising. I hope that answered your question unless you have a follow-up question.
No.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for coming.